Good morning, everyone. Merry Christmas. My name is Jason. I've been attending Joy for 10 years, and this is my wife, Janet. She's been a member of Joy for over 5 years, or for 8 years, and we're from Joy Tend to Fly, and we're here to share with you our testimony on our journey to start a family, our struggles with infertility, our hope and faith and answered prayers. Jan and I first met at Joy in 2005, and we've been married for the past 5.5 years. A year after we were married, it was in our plans that we would try to start a family in the summer of '08, but we slowly realized that God had a different plan for us.
For the past 4 years, we've been trying to start our family. Even now, in retrospect, we can see how God was in control. It was some of the hardest and darkest times of our lives. For the last 10 years, I've been dealing with endometriosis. Endometriosis is a gynecological condition which can cause cysts and adhesions in and around reproductive and pelvic organs. In 2002, at the age of 24, I was diagnosed with endometriosis and had my first abdominal surgery. I was experiencing irregular bleeding, and it was discovered I had 3 large ovarian cysts. In 2002, I underwent a 5-hour laparotomy to excise a cyst. In the process, a large portion of my right ovary was removed. Recovery from surgery was long and painful, and I now bear a 6-inch scar along my abdomen. Of course, at 24, my parents and I were freaking out about the consequences of losing my right ovary, but the doctor reassured us that I would be able to have children in the future. Because of my diagnosis, I've been closely followed by my doctor for several years. In the years that followed, God gave me a heart to become a nurse, and I moved from California to New York to begin nursing school. Eventually, I became a neonatal intensive care unit nurse. When I moved to New Jersey, I switched to a local physician to be monitored. When Jason and I were married, this new doctor reassured me that I would have no problems with getting pregnant. 6 months after Jason and I began trying to conceive, I knew that something wasn't quite right. I pushed my doctor to run extensive tests, and the test results were inconclusive. By then, I knew I needed an endometriosis specialist. This new doctor said my endometriosis was back and that it was quite extensive. He wasn't quite sure of how bad the tumor-like growths, called endometriomas and cysts were, but said that I would need another surgery to remove the growths, and any attempt at conception would fail due to the issues with my reproductive anatomy. Jason and I sat in stunned silence in his office. As we began to accept that surgery was our only option, we had to deal with the incredible financial burden that my surgery was causing. Unfortunately, this particular specialist did not accept any form of insurance, and his surgical fees alone were $24,000. But we decided to surround ourselves with prayer and hope that we would get some sort of coverage. God provided financially, and in the end, my insurance covered the hospital fees, the anesthesia fees, and a large portion of the doctor's fees. I had my second surgery on July 2nd, 2009. Our doctor said that the surgery would take about an hour and a half. However, he had no idea that the endometrioma's reach had extended beyond my reproductive organs and involved other organs in my pelvis. I had stage 4 endometriosis, the worst of its kind. My uterus was twisted and cocked to the right at a 45-degree angle. Both left and right fallopian tubes were stuck to the sides of the uterus. And I had, cysts wrapped around both ovaries. Scar tissue and adhesions from my first surgery, as well as new endometriomas, covered all my reproductive organs. I had endometriomas wrapped around my colon, squeezing it so tightly that the doctor said it was on the verge of bursting. The growths were also tightly wrapped around my right ureter, causing my urine from draining properly into my bladder. My kidneys were beginning to show signs of hydronephrosis. A 1.5-hour surgery turned into 4 hours. Jason and I were shocked and scared by what had happened to my anatomy. I had no real signs or symptoms of any issues except for extreme fatigue. We both had thought that my night shifts at the hospital were the cause of my malaise. After surgery, the doctor reassured us that I would be pregnant within a year. Fast forward about a year later, and still no baby. I was put on low-dose fertility drugs for several months, but with no luck. Within the following year, and as I grew older and closer to approaching what is considered advanced maternal age, my hormone levels began to drop, and the doctor was confounded by my results. And after 2 years, declared that he did all he could, and it was time for us to move on to a fertility specialist. We were devastated. We had put all our hope and trust into a doctor who reassured us that he could get us pregnant. Jason and I knew that we weren't quite ready to go to a fertility specialist. Well, mostly I wasn't ready. Part of the reason was I was a NICU nurse. I knew all there was to know about in vitro fertilization. The products of IVF were babies that I treated in the NICU, and I was scared that I would end up with babies with severe genetic defects, extreme prematurity, or having multiples. I didn't want to become an octomom or end up with a reality show called Jason and Janet plus 8. I didn't want to deal with the possibility of creating a large amount of embryos that would test us both morally and ethically, not to mention the large financial commitment that fertility treatments would cost. Beyond my medical knowledge and our worldly fears, Jason and I weren't sure how to justify creating life in a petri dish. We wondered whether or not we were playing God or going down that road. By going down that road, we struggled with trying to find biblical answers to our infertility and saw our issues with conception as a test of our faith. Jason was always positive and knew that God would eventually give us our baby. 4 years had come and gone, and by then we had exhausted every physical means we knew of, except for one, IVF. We prayerfully considered this next step and felt peace about our decision to go ahead and seek intensive fertility treatments. At the end of 2012, we had our first appointment with the Center for Reproductive Medicine and Fertility at Cornell Medical Center. There we met with our reproductive endocrinologist, and after reviewing my past medical history, surgical reports, and conducting a few tests of his own, he sat us down to tell us our prognosis. It wasn't looking good. My stage 4 endometriosis had done irreparable damage to my ovaries, and my hormone levels were that of someone much older than me. He said I had very little eggs left, and those that were left, he wasn't sure would be viable for IVF. He wasn't very hopeful that we could get pregnant with my own eggs and began talking about alternative methods for having children. I sat there stunned and silent. Tears began to roll down my cheeks. He said we should look into IVF with donor eggs and said that if he could predict our IVF success with my own eggs, it was maybe about 30%. Oh, and by the way, he said, Janet, you need to have surgery again. You've got a growth in your uterus, and I don't know what it is. We pleaded with the doctor to let us give IVF a try, and he agreed and said he would try his best to get us pregnant. We also scheduled surgery 2 weeks later. Those 2 weeks gave us a chance to tell our parents and gather up prayer support from our friends and family. We prayed and fasted for successful surgery and ultimately for pregnancy. Although the odds weren't in our favor, Jason and I remained hopeful that we would eventually have a baby in our arms. On July 11, 2012, I had my third surgery related to endometriosis. At the end of August, we began our first round of IVF. Typically, a woman of my age with IVF could produce up to 10 to 15 eggs, but because of my low ovarian reserve, my doctor put me on 3 times the typical dose of IVF. Every day for 2 weeks, I gave myself 2 to 3 different hormone injections in my stomach and had my blood drawn and an ultrasound done at 7 a.m. every morning. At the end of 2 weeks, the doctor saw about 4 to 5 large follicles in my ovaries and scheduled egg retrieval on Thursday, September 13th. After waking up from anesthesia, I was devastated to learn that in the end, there were only 2 viable eggs. We knew that the odds were against us, but we remained hopeful. The next day, my IVF nurse called us to tell us the most amazing news. Both eggs were mature and fertilized. The 2 little embryo babies, at the time only a cluster of 8 cells each, were then implanted on Sunday, September 16th. 2 weeks later, after a blood test, the IVF nurse called again to give us the news. God had given us our miracle. I was pregnant. 2 weeks after that, I had my very first ultrasound to confirm the pregnancy. Jason and I saw 2 little black dots on the screen. Both embryos had implanted. We're having twins. Currently, I am now 16 weeks pregnant with twins, and both babies are doing well. The past 4 years have not only been physically difficult, but they were an emotional and spiritual battle as well. I wish I could say that I was positive and hopeful during that entire time, but in my weakness, I let my unbelief cloud my trust in God. I dealt with jealousy and bitterness and began to pity myself. I listened to Satan's lies and would think that maybe Jason would be better off with someone else. I felt guilty for robbing him of becoming a father and felt inadequate as a woman. But God, in his great love for me, gave me the most amazing husband. He gave me a man who loved and supported me unconditionally, who held me as I cried and who took great care of me after my surgeries. God knew that I needed someone like Jason to increase my faith, to spur me on to persevere, and to help put all my hope and trust in God. God also gave me the most amazing friends here at Joy. He gave us friends who despaired for us, rejoiced with us, and who covered us in prayer. We are so incredibly grateful to all our friends here at Joy who have partnered with us in this journey, and we share these two babies with all of you who prayed unconditionally for us. We had desperately prayed for so long that God would bless us with just one baby, and now in his generosity and goodness, he has given us two little miracles.
And so in these past 4 years, I personally clung to hope with all my might. It wasn't easy, and there were dark times for me. In the end, it was the encouragement and support from our family and friends here at Joy that helped us keep going. From our close friends at Joy coming over to give us food after surgeries, to all the prayer warriors praying for us every week so diligently, we want to say thank you. We are so incredibly blessed today because of you. Without a doubt, we know that it was prayer and fasting that moved God's hand in favor over us. When the 2012 year began, Janet and I knew that this year would be significant. I spent time in dedicated prayer and fasted sweets for this entire year, and God just continued to provide for us financially. The IVF procedure was completely covered by my company's health insurance, a price tag of over $20,000. God also answered every detail of every prayer request throughout the IVF process. God's faithfulness to answer our prayers has been completely overwhelming. And now we are on the cusp of a new chapter in our life. Actually, today is our last Sunday at Joy, as I was given a great job opportunity in Southern California. We will be moving out there at the end of this week. Even in the move plans, God has shown us favor. For example, I planned on selling my car before the move, and a couple weeks ago, my car was actually in a vehicle accident while it was parked outside my home. I was nowhere near it. Long story short, I was not at fault, and my car is a total loss. The insurance check written to me is much, much more than what I would have been able to sell it for. So God is just incredibly generous, and we're just so thankful for our Joy family, and we're just going to miss all of you so, so much. Joy will always be in our hearts and prayers, and we look forward to coming back for visits with our twins. Above all else, we're just thankful to our loving Father for all his provisions. He completely amazes us. Thank you.